Hi everybody, Mr. Skorecki here. So this pod we're going to start talking about what happens after World War I. We're going to review the basics of what happened after the war itself ended, but really the changes that occurred because of it. So you can see on here we have our goals, our paperwork. How did 20th century conflict in fact people of the world? How did my life be different? I was born in one of the areas we discussed at this particular time. What is the relationship between the events covered here and events we've previously discussed? And how topics and events covered this unit affect our lives and lives of others in the world today. We'll talk a lot about how the map changes, and really how people view the world differently. You need to know something about economic disparity. Germany faces a huge economic disparity because they're blamed for the war. The Middle East and religious conflict are key things to understand because there really isn't such a large conflict like we hear today about, well, it's basically Middle Eastern Muslim extremists and Israeli, but they try to make it an issue of Muslim versus Jew, which it's not really. Prosperity. There are some countries that come off well and experience a period of prosperity. We'll talk about that. Change of social roles. We talked about women in the war, and now we'll talk about other ways people view class and money, which ties into the Russian Revolution, which is also known as the Communist Revolution, and talk about how war is kind of the source of social change as well as technological. And on the right there we have our standards, just making sure that we know what we're doing and we're keeping this all together and on pace. Okay. So the first week of this pod, you'll see there's a quick review, okay, with talking about the Treaty of Versailles, the problems, so that's how you pronounce it. Like, I know in Pittsburgh it's North Versailles, it's actually pronounced Versailles most other places. Then the poetry of post-war Europe talks about that disillusionment we've been discussing. Okay? And then we'll talk about how the USA dealt with World War I, and it's going to have some surprising things, especially when you get to the freedom of speech assignment. Okay? The second week we're doing the same basic concepts. We're still, viewing these same ideas, but we're focusing on the Russian Revolution. The Russian Revolution happens during the war itself, and Russia kind of removes itself, but it's the first time we see communism in terms of name and what they do. And communism changes the way that the world interacts with each other. So you'll find more about what communism means, who this bald guy waving his hat is, and why communism always has to deal with Russia and stuff like that. And we'll talk about if the Smurfs are communists, kind of as a fun exercise. And the last week before the break, again, focusing on the same topics, now we're going to look more at individual areas. Okay. So you'll talk about imperial independence. We're going to start with explaining what that is and having you look at India. Then we'll talk about how the Middle East changed. We'll look at Japan, because even though Japan wasn't that big a player in the war, it starts building its empire because of it. If you look at the maps that we have here, and we'll talk about China as well. If you look at the maps here, you can see just how much World War I changed everything in terms of how things are broken up. Empires are starting to be destroyed. They think empires are a bad thing, which is before really not what we thought. And it's a big change. So go ahead, get to work. Let me know what you think. Hidden any problems, feel free to contact me. All that good stuff. All right, I'll see you later.